Welcome to a Higher Future podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Gravagna. I'm joined with my co-host, Yubi Simonieri. Today we have our guest, Caroline Stokes, the author of Elephants Before Unicorns. She is the CEO of Forward Executive Search. She is winner of the Marshall Goldsmith Leading Global Coach Award and host of the Intelligent Recruiter podcast, which has a compilation of almost 70 episodes. Welcome, Caroline. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to spend some time with you both.
All right.
Yes, welcome. We're very excited. Right now you're in Vancouver, British Columbia, right?
That's right. And we're, in the middle of COVID. We've just found out that just over 6,500 companies died over COVID, and wow. We're all doing what we can to move the province and the country forward.
And so that number was just in British Columbia.
That was just in British Columbia, yeah. So that's an awful lot of businesses in a very, very short period of time. Well, not that short period of time, obviously in the past year, but that impacts, as you can imagine, the knock-on effect for everyone is just absolutely huge. And it's been a very, very difficult year for businesses, for sure.
There's this idea of a forest fire. After the forest fire, the forest floor is fertile but different, and things can grow there that weren't able to grow before because of the shade. I'm wondering if there's a future that we're looking at where things will be quite different in the business world because of all of this clearing of what's been lost. And now there's an opportunity for regrowth or rebirth.
And I completely agree. I think that's a really optimistic viewpoint. I think the challenge is that when people, what it's like, when people are in the moment, they feel like their life has been taken away from them, all of it, whether it's their restaurants, takeout business, the hair salon, whatever it is, it's a huge blow for them. So for small businesses, for large businesses, it's a huge blow for them as well. But once you can get out of that, or you can put that optimistic lens on it, it's like, okay, how can we make it better? How can we redo the whole thing all over again? And I remember having a conversation with somebody quite recently that many years ago, a couple of decades ago, he lost his restaurant in a fire because there was a fire and it was arson. And he said that once everything had been cleared up from an insurance perspective, et cetera, he was able to do a complete redo. And it was actually, very refreshing and invigorating. But I think it's going to take a long time for people to feel that way.
Yeah, that was a literal fire, right? And
a literal fire.
Literal fire. Oh my. So you wrote Elephants Before Unicorns before the pandemic. What is that title about?
Ooh, I love answering this question because I think I change it ever so slightly every single time. So Elephants Before Unicorns, Emotionally Intelligent HR Strategies to Save Your Company is all about organizations finding the elephants in their room or their organization, with their people, with their teams, with their own beliefs and biases, and the way they work on a day-to-day basis, to then understand how you need to change your organization so you can attract and retain and evolve your organization and attract the unicorns that you want to really be able to bring forward. One of the unicorns that there's many unicorns in the book, but how I like to talk about it now, so long after it was published, and the COVID year is just like completely like drained everybody. And it's like, okay, how do we explain it for today's listener? And now during COVID time, we've got this unique challenge whereby you've got employees that are advocating and they're moving things, and they're very influential. They want to be in the right kind of organization. So they're actually speaking up or pushing up to the senior management to say, this is what we're expecting, this is how we should be working, which is absolutely fantastic. And because really that's how it should be. Usually the C-suite is so high and so far away from the current reality when we talk about Black Lives Matters, when we talk about the societal and economic changes. It's not just about whether or not they can afford the yacht, it's whether or not these people can afford to eat whilst looking after their grandmother or having to homeschool and doing all of these different things. So it's even more important now for organizations to adapt to our new societal and economic norms and to reinvent the way that we actually do business. And to be able to, I think there's much more real talk in the environment now. Some people don't want it still, and that's okay. Maybe that happens. We all live in denial, or we're burned out from just too much, the tsunami of data that comes across. But in this particular situation, it's just so important for people to learn how to communicate and find better ways to move forward. And it just takes a quick conversation.
It sounds like what you might be saying is that what the conversation that was happening before the pandemic was more superficial, and now we're really getting to brass tacks on what needs to change in terms of organization growth. And these elephants in the room have become more life and death, more real, more about allowing people to feed their families and have income that supports them, as opposed to some of the more superficial things people were willing to talk about before.
Oh yeah, it's gone beyond ping pong tables now, quite significantly.
Yeah. No, I think that's.
Well, then I have to ask a different question that I was going to ask you before, and it's, how would you rewrite your chapter on onboarding?
Good question. Now that everything feels very remote, so many people I speak to say, oh, I'm joining a company, I won't even meet anyone, I'm missing that human connection. And as we well know, people didn't want that human connection. They were too overwhelmed with that human connection. There was just too much going on and pointless meetings and things like that. Now it's a case of people are missing and actually noticing and missing the human dynamics and the cues that they would notice, and the unwritten rules that come through body language and connection and communication that just don't happen in that place. I see that actually as a positive, which it kind of goes against my belief, which is that we all need to work collaboratively and we need to work closely and we need to, be in the same air with each other. And actually, I think times have changed so much now. You have to go deeper, faster, quicker with your team. And that requires the same principles, which is on day 4, you're having a kickoff meeting with all of the stakeholders. You're having an EQ assessment during that time, very, very early on. That coach will join you on that journey every single week to help you evolve. And then day 50, you have a kickoff meeting again to understand what the objectives and challenges are. And because things, as we know, change so quickly. And then at the end, there's a 360. And the whole purpose of that is to ensure that all of the stakeholders are super duper incorporated and involved with each other, and to support that person's success. And what invariably happens now, I remember talking with a woman who was just at the beginning of COVID, and she had just accepted a job at Microsoft in Seattle, and she was relocating from Austin. She missed the snowstorm, thank goodness, this past week. And she went to Seattle, and she was saying, Caroline, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll be doing everything via Zoom or probably Microsoft Teams. And I said to her, okay, this is the program that you need to adopt. And for you to be successful, and for everyone to know what you're doing so they can support you, and so on and so forth. And she said it was absolutely transformational, because you need to give people that permission. Otherwise, they just wait for HR or they wait for their boss, and you need to advocate your own professional success.
Well, and I think there's a new intentionality to our interactions now, because it's been completely redefined. I mean, everything from how often are we meeting? You know, do we have to meet in this conference room 4 times a day? You know, do we need this meeting? But I think there's like this really interesting intentionality that has come out of our experience with COVID and most of us moving into this remote work, you know, because yeah,
it's forced us to completely change how we operate. And I know a lot of organizations have done it so seamlessly, especially if they're in technology. I've noticed as well that insurance companies are so fast paced now, or they were last year, so fast paced at adapting the way that they communicate with people. And in during that time, they would have probably laid off a lot of people as well. So that's the other aspect, which is you implement tech, you don't need to have the contact and the context with a human being. And I find that quite unnerving, you know, to a degree. I don't feel safe about it or comfortable about it right now. But I know that it's accelerating at such a pace that I think we're now becoming comfortable with it. If I can call comfortable sounds too nice, but I think we're becoming comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's that adaptation. And you know, it's interesting going back to the metaphor, Nicole, you brought up earlier, and you know, we kind of had to break everything down so that we could rebuild it in a better way, right? Because you get so deep into building a company and a culture that at some point, like I imagine it's a hard obstacle to stop and look back and go, and this is pre-COVID, and go, we can rebuild this. And most companies don't do that. But COVID really gave everybody sort of a way to reset in a sense.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering, you know, do you think companies are taking advantage of that? And then, you know, from there, what does the future look like for work, for companies who did take advantage, for those who didn't? And what does that look like moving forward?
I'm going to steal somebody's idea that she's in Australia, and she's a phenomenal entrepreneur. She's just started her own recruiting company after being a national account manager. And she said it so succinctly, which is organizations or businesses are running in 3 different lanes right now. You've got the people that are working in a very, very fast lane because let's talk about Lululemon and what they're doing in China right now. There's a highly in demand product. And you look at Microsoft or any of the other tech leaders, they've all identified that this moment in time has accelerated the tech space dramatically. And they're taking advantage of it in phenomenal ways. And with Microsoft, it's easy. They've got LinkedIn, they've got Skype, they've got Microsoft Teams, and all of these different things that they're wanting to incorporate. And you can see how quickly they're moving things forward because there is this demand and because there is this genuine need for their technology. So you've got those front runners that are just accelerating at blindingly fast rate, and they're able to change and chop everything at light speed. Then you've got the medium-sized companies that are still trying to find their way, and those medium-sized companies, or maybe their products aren't as accessible or interesting, or they've got various challenges with their product, or the way that they market it, or the way that they deliver it or distribute it, or whatever. Or maybe they've got a really bad track record from the consumer's perspective, and they've got so much that they have to deal with, that which fire do you put out first? Yeah. And that's usually, I think, the issue whereby those companies are the ones that need an awful lot of help from a strategic and from a consulting perspective, to help them understand how to grow and what have you, because they're going to have their hair on fire. And then sadly, you've got the people who are in the slow lane, which doesn't sound at all attractive, whereby they're hand to mouth. They cannot find the solutions. They can't run at light speed because they just want to put food on the table. And they're unable to consider for a second just how they're able to improve their business, because they can't even deal with the basics, or they don't know how, what the next quarter is going to look like, or whether or not they're even going to be there. And if you remember the first quarter of COVID, we didn't know we didn't know if we were going to be alive, if this was going to be a Hollywood movie, end of the world type of scenario. So I think we're at that stage now, and the future of work for all of them is that you number one, you have to adapt. You've got to create a director. I call it, and lots of people call them this, so I'm not creating anything unique here, but a board of directors whereby, or coaches, or reliable entrepreneurs that are able to support you in a way that can help you think and find solutions, because it's a hard road. It's not easy.
So you've brought up now support coming in from other humans, advisors, coaches, that kind of thing, and also support coming in from tech and adopting tech.
Yes, so much
now
tech.
I'm wondering, and to pull the two together, is there something you've seen, and I know you're very connected to the future of work. I know that a lot of people in the space who are thinking about this sort of thing, and probably I think you were just sitting in on a panel last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, about the future of work. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on using AI in recruitment or hiring, and what are your criticisms or any kind of pro take you have on that topic?
AI in recruiting, there's just, let me just get my positive point of view across, and then we'll go into the other aspect. Speaking from a place whereby when all there was LinkedIn and a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and some terrible client management system, I am so grateful that technology is able to transform the way that recruiters work. The challenge is that organizations will fail quite often to understand their own processes, what the candidate journey is like from end to end, from the time that they actually put their resume in, or they have to retype something, or then nobody knows the information, and they have to provide it again, or whatever. It can be really, really challenging for the candidate. And in fact, I'm having a conversation with somebody quite soon, because they're in New York and they were so frustrated with various companies' systems, and he's in marketing. And he said, I just couldn't believe it. It was the worst possible experience I've ever had. And I will never go and buy from that company again. And as I wrote in my book, British Telecommunications, the biggest mobile and landline and internet company in the UK, in my book, I wrote about how the HR leader came in specifically to change it because their whole candidate experience was horrendous. He didn't just focus on that. He also focused on the hiring managers. He focused on the leaders. So everything was integrated, and it created a wonderful experience, because they could see the drop-off of people abandoning, unplugging, disconnecting their relationship with British Telecommunications. So after several years, they were able to see what the return on investment was, and it was absolutely fundamental. Then you've also got, Pymetrics. I have to get my mouth around that. Pymetrics, we've got Frida Poli and many other sources that are coming up with technology. And I hope that there will be, for example, Beth Porter's technology, where it's all about video conferencing, and you're able to interview people through the video conferencing. And that person that is doing the interviewing is able to get the feedback on themselves, on how they performed and how they can make themselves better. And she's just doing some amazing things with that technology. And then with Frida Poli, she's really focusing on trying to create very clean, unbiased data that will help ensure that people are hiring the right people. And then, as you would have seen in the news in the past week, Google I think they just fired a couple of people in their ethics department, which was, it was very interesting. And then I read the story about how that woman had been, challenged and what have you. And so we all know that there is a very interesting story there. But it's the big unknown. And really, there will be, at some stage, I believe, there will be these phenomenal integrated packages that you can get from end to end that will enable the candidates to feel great, the hiring managers to know what's going on, the recruiters to do their job so they're not burning out every 5 minutes because they have too much on their workload and they're not creating the right experience. And also they are able to hire people that are aligned with the way that their organization is going from a performance perspective. So I'm encouraged and excited. There's just an awful lot of work to do. And I think, and I believe, this is my gut feel only, no facts, no insider tips here, but there's going to be some consolidation. And I think that's going to be the most exciting part then, whether it's Google that does it, whether it's Microsoft that does it, or whoever the first mover is in that. It may be an unknown, who knows? But it's going to be the most exciting thing that when that happens. And I'm going to be keeping my finger on the pulse.
Yeah, that does sound exciting. Well, and I think again, kind of, it goes back to intentionality. We always talk about AI and different technology that I feel like a lot of companies just plug in and let it go because they think it will immediately solve for a bandwidth issue or whatever without thinking about how it's going to impact their entire process. I love that story about British Telecom. Virgin had a similar story in that they actually were able to calculate all the candidates who weren't hired. They were a $6 to $7 million opportunity as a Virgin customer that they were losing because of the candidate experience, right? And so they figured out like the actual number of, look, if we treat everybody the same, if we treat everybody great and give them an amazing candidate experience, even if we don't hire them, they're still going to go tell people, they're still going to be a customer, and they're going to tell other people that they should come, interview with us because it was such a great experience. And so I love that.
And you're not going to believe it, but the guy that did that at Virgin then went to British Telecommunications. It's the same guy.
You're kidding. That's so amazing.
I'm not kidding. And he's in my book and I can't remember his name. I feel terrible. I'm terrible with names.
We'll follow up with you once you remember his name. And we'll write it down somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's cool. So, I think it just final. So like if you had to wrap up your in a couple sentences, like future of work in general, like I what I'm hearing is consolidation, because I agree, right? I mean, I think just in the fact that you've got those 3 lanes that you talked about, and some of those companies in the slow lane aren't going to make it. And so are we going to see a consolidation of efforts between companies, which also lends to what you talked about as well, which is more collaboration, like, going outside of your organization to pull together a group of people to help us steer the course to a better future of work, really collaborating, whether it's with organizations who previously were, competitors, or I don't know. Like, I feel like that's interesting too, right?
It's common right now. And I was talking to an M&A mergers and acquisitions expert quite recently. She wrote a book about it because she's usually in charge of all of these activities. Her name is Jennifer Fondreve. I remembered her name. A second. And she saw COVID as an opportunity, because she could see that when organizations have technology, or they have people, or they have a product that is desirable, but people want to shift. The past year, I've seen CEOs quit. I've seen CEOs decide that they are just going to want to have their company absorbed into another organization, and for them to take the chips away to Barbados or whatever. It's very, very fluid right now, and there's lots of people creating, innovating. I think we're going to be seeing some phenomenal innovations very soon. I have no idea what they're going to look like, but I know that I think we have to be prepared for this shift now. A little bit like Clubhouse. Clubhouse has just gone boom.
Right, in less than a year. Yeah.
Yeah, just
incredible.
Boom, and everybody's wanting to get onto the bandwagon, and Facebook are checking them out, and all sorts of things like that. So being prepared and open for all of these phenomenal shifts, despite the grief of the past year, and wherever we might be, and to think how are we able to move forward in this particular area, and to just be agile and to feel like you're innovating and pioneering. I mean, what a time to be alive right now. Yes, I'm stealing that from Hamilton, but it's like, wow, we're really seeing things.
Yeah, I love it.
So, I think my recommendation is change is still coming. Be open, be excited, and see how it can work for you.
The other thing I heard you say is, in not so many words, but we'll listen to it, it is the world is smaller. It seems smaller now than it ever has because we're all online, and it doesn't matter how far physically we are from each other, but people are right there. And in that sense, we can no longer think of people as coming into our lives for a moment and then leaving. If a person comes into our lives as a customer, they may ultimately be an employee. If they come in as a candidate, they may ultimately be a customer. They may ultimately be, who knows what, an investor. We need to treat everyone as though we will see them again.
Yes, absolutely. The whole idea of transactional communications, where you do not pay attention and you do not think about, well, how can I make that interaction better or that communication better? You're not expecting to think about that every single time. That would be very hard work. You'd burn out very quickly and you'd overthink things. But if you can have a strategy and have a flow on how to enhance that, and have your entire organization think about that as well, you've got that whole integrated process on workplace emotional intelligence that impacts everything: the people, the customers, your employees, your external partners that you work with, and how that will impact your product. And then obviously on the other side, you've got the customers and how they interact. You want your people to love you want your people to love your product as much as they love doing what they're doing. And you have to. I mean, we all have stories about how people made us feel, and how we've still got that baggage right here in our little solar plexus about how they made us feel. Companies have the power too. Recruiters have that power. Hiring managers have that power to completely decimate that interest and that trust. So we have to take greater responsibility of our own emotional intelligence and how we apply that to those interactions, so we can make the greatest possible impact.
So many mic drops.
You're so dumb.
All day long. I love it. Well, Caroline, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the time. I mean, we could talk about this all day, but it's really been great to have you. Thank you to the audience for checking us out. We've just launched this podcast, so we're really excited about continuing these conversations about the future of work. So thank you, Dr. Nicole, as always. And check us out next time. Links will be all over the page and all that stuff. So, all right, take care, everybody.